Good afternoon. I'd like, first of all, to thank the organizing committee for inviting the Portuguese Society of Osteoporosis to do a symposium, and it is a pleasure for us to be here. And now I would like to talk then about the iatrogenic bone loss. Secondary osteoporosis is responsible for about 20 to 30% of cases in postmenopausal women and more than 50% of cases in men. Among the secondary etiology, we have the drugs. They are many. I'm not going to speak about all of them, but only a little bit of some of them that I think it is important, especially for the colleagues that are gynecologists and obstetricians. Starting by the breast cancer, as you know, it is a tumor that has been associated with a very high loss of bone and osteoporosis, especially not only because of the cancer itself, but especially because of the treatments, mainly surgery and radiotherapy, and also chemotherapy that is going to induce a premature ovarian failure, and also the so-called hormone therapy or endocrine-based adjuvant therapy. And here we will have the aromatase inhibitors and the GnRH agonists will be the main drugs that induce bone loss. We know that surgery, radiotherapy and or hormone therapy will produce a loss of 13% of bone mineral density during the first year of treatment. And we also know that adjuvant therapies confer a very high risk of vertebral fractures, around 5 times higher in these women. This is a slide to show that the cancer treatment induces a bone loss at a very higher rates than the age-related bone loss. As you can see, in the menopausal women 1%, but if we had a woman doing aromatase inhibitors, we will have 2.6%. The aromatase inhibitor therapy plus GnRH agonists goes to 7%. And already in the study WHI, we already observed a very high risk of fracture in women with breast cancer of 31%. And so why is that? As I said, chemotherapy is inducing a premature ovarian failure, so these women will not have estrogens that are very important to bone, as you all know. The main drug that induces this is mainly cyclophosphamide, and also associated with direct toxic effects on bone cells, we will have a loss of around 4% of the bone mineral density in the lumbar spine in the first 6 months after chemotherapy. But these are the main drugs that induce also loss of bone. The aromatase inhibitors act inhibiting this enzyme. This is an enzyme that transforms the androgens, mainly testosterone, in estrogens. And why is it important to inhibit this in breast cancer patients? Because in the postmenopausal women, even they do not have the estrogens produced by the ovaries, they still have androgens produced by adrenal glands, and inhibiting this enzyme, we will do total suppression of the estrogens in blood. So the effects will be almost 99% reduction in estrogens at 6 weeks, and we will have a bone loss of around 2% per year with these drugs. Several studies, as you can see, the most significant are the ATTAC study that was done with anastrozole compared with tamoxifen, and it showed a very high incidence in fractures in the group of the anastrozole, and the other one, this one, EAS, was done with exemstan versus tamoxifen, also showed a very increased incidence of fractures. Another group of drugs is the GnRH agonists. These ones are used in younger women, and the effect is to inhibit the production of LH and FSH by the pituitary gland, and doing that, inhibiting the production of the estradiol by the ovaries. So this treatment, as I said, is usually done in premenopausal women, and in the first 2 years we will have a reduction in bone mineral density of 6 to 10%. However, with these drugs we don't have so many data about fractures, but it seems that if the woman has a normal BMD before the treatment, maybe there will be not an increased risk in fractures. And now I will change to another hormone that is very used by the woman population. The thyroid hormone is sometimes used for goiters, but the main and the most important use is in people that did a total thyroidectomy for thyroid cancer, and then we use the thyroxine in supraphysiologic dose in order to induce what we call a subclinical hyperthyroidism, which is a TSH suppressed with normal thyroid hormones, and the aim is to try that the tumor does not recur. And as we knew for a long time ago that thyroid hormones act on bone, but more recently studies, not only in animals but also some clinical studies, have been shown that TSH is an inhibitor of bone turnover. We know that, for instance, in the TSH receptor null mice, there is an increase in bone turnover with a decrease in bone mass and osteoporosis. Some of the clinical studies that were done to see what happens in bone mineral density, the studies have different results. Some studies show a reduced BMD, others do not show any variation, but there are many confounding factors here in all of these studies. However, this meta-analysis, for instance, done by Hemstra, shows, and this seems to be what really happens, it's that there is a risk of reducing bone mineral density in the woman in postmenopause with hyperthyroidism, iatrogenic and subclinical. This is a work that our group has done, and comparing a group of elderly women with subclinical hyperthyroidism and compared to a control group, very similar in terms of age, weight and height, and we did not see any difference in bone mineral density in all of the skeletal regions. This study by Liz analyzed a very big group of patients, older patients that were doing levothyroxine in about 3.5 years of follow-up. And what they saw was that 10% of them, and most were women, had an increased risk of fractures. And that was related to the dose of the thyroxine. And they saw that if the TSH was less than 0.03, the risk was increased. Another important group of drugs that recently also seems to affect negatively the bone is the glitazones. The glitazones are agonists of the PPR gamma receptor. They are insulinosensitizers with major effects on liver, muscle, and adipose tissue, and we use it in diabetes. And we know that they also have bone effects. And that is because mainly they act on the mesenchymal stem cells, deviating their differentiation instead of osteoblasts to adipocytes. So we will have a decrease in osteoblasts and a decrease in bone formation. This is the main mechanism. Also, they have a little one that is decreasing aromatase activity and decreasing estrogen production. So these drugs have been associated to an increased incidence of fractures. This is a classic study, the ADOPT study, which compared rosiglitazone with other oral antidiabetics, and that showed an increase in the incidence of fractures in feet, hands, and humerus in the people who were doing rosiglitazone. These meta-analyses of fractures in controlled randomized studies of glitazones also showed a duplication of the global risk in women with type 2 diabetes. And here there seemed to be a decrease in bone mineral density, not only at the hip, but also at the lumbar spine. However, this is still a controversial issue. This work, for instance, is a very recent one and has the opposite conclusions. For instance, this is a population-based cohort of a very high number of patients doing oral antidiabetics in Denmark, and they saw just a little increase in the risk of fractures in the current glitazone users versus non-diabetic patients. And globally, they saw that there was no significant increased risk of fracture compared with users of other anti-diabetic drugs. So, as you see, it is still a controversial issue and needs more studies to take more important conclusions. This is just to note, and maybe this is one of the reasons why the previous studies are not totally conclusive, is because the type 2 diabetes is already a disease associated to fractures, and that is due to the effects of hyperglycemia on bone turnover, on collagen glycosylation, changes in vitamin D metabolism, and also complications. So it is still has much to study to take more conclusions. And now I will talk about another class of drugs that is very used by especially the women, that is serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors. For a long time that we know that serotoninergic system acts in bone metabolism. It was described to be receptor for serotonin in osteoblasts and osteoclasts, and the inhibition of the serotonin transportation is associated with a reduction in osteoblasts activity and osteoclasts differentiation. Some studies like this one that was done in 2,000 women and was comparing the users of serotonin inhibitors with the classic tricyclic antidepressant, showed that the users of serotonin inhibitors had a reduction in bone mineral density in total hip, femoral neck, and trochanter. So these are the major drugs that have been studied. So the clinical studies suggest that there is a reduction in bone mineral density. However, it is important to see these two aspects. One of them is that major depressive disease is already associated with two main risk factors, not only for bone loss but also to fractures, that is inactivity and nutritional deficits, because these people don't eat very well, so we'll have nutritional deficits. And another thing also interesting to see is that both the tricyclic antidepressants and also the serotonin inhibitors are associated to an increase in falls and so in fragility fractures. And the last one I will talk about, the proton pump inhibitors, is a class of drugs that also very recently have been associated with fractures. It is also a controversial issue. Some studies seemed to show that a high dose and a use longer than 1 year can increase the bone fracture incidence in about 10–40%. And also an important thing, that is a decrease in serum magnesium. Some studies, for instance, using risidronate showed that it significantly reduced the risk of new vertebral fractures compared with placebo, but regardless of the use of these drugs. And another interesting thing is that histamine 2 receptor antagonists do not seem to be associated to fracture risk. So there are many conflicting results. It is not very clarified, this issue, not only in terms of fractures, but also in terms of physiopathology. It is still discussed if it interferes with calcium absorption, if it decreases or not bone mineral density, probably only at lumbar spine. And another important issue, the effects on falling, because, for instance, omeprazole and also ranitidine induce in some patients dizziness and so can increase the falls. So it's an issue still controversial. And just to summarize, I would say that most of the drugs, some of them I did not speak about, but as you can see, almost all of them induce an increase in bone resorption, however, the glitazones and the selective serotonin inhibitors also decrease bone formation. Also, heparin and oral anticoagulants have an effect on the decrease in bone formation, and also the antiretroviral therapy has a dual effect, increasing bone resorption and decreasing bone formation. It is also interesting to see that some of them, mainly the proton pump inhibitors, the retroviral, the calcineurin inhibitors, and the heparin and anticoagulants, act here in vitamin D levels, decreasing the vitamin D levels, and secondarily they will increase PTH and then increases bone resorption. Regarding bone mineral density, almost all of them reduce bone mineral density at lumbar spine, as you can see, also at the hip, except the oral anticoagulants that seem to not change the bone mineral density. And regarding the fractures, almost all of them increase vertebral and non-vertebral fractures, except the diuretics, which are not very well studied. And I will finish with this slide that is very important for our clinical practice, and which is what to do in these patients taking these medications that we know that will affect negatively the bone. First, assess the fracture risk before the prescription and any time we're going to prescribe again. Second, we must recommend lifestyle changes to promote bone health, namely avoid tobacco and alcohol, optimize calcium and vitamin D intake, and encourage exercise. Then consider the medications with less skeletal effects. then we must routinely review the need for that medication and stop when it is not needed anymore. It is also important to follow the treatments and the guidelines for osteoporosis in general. Also very important to reassess bone mineral density, especially at least once a year in patients who do aromatase inhibitors or GnRH agonists. And at last, regularly reinforce the necessity to adhere to osteoporosis treatment once it has been initiated. And thank you very much for your attention.